Hello, BookTube. And this afternoon, or late morning, early afternoon here, I've had a bit of energy, and I've tackled a box of science fiction magazines that I was gifted. I was gifted about 300 or so a couple of years ago, and I haven't really done anything with them. I sort of looked at them a little bit, but I haven't cleaned them up. So the box that I went into had a lot of New Worlds science fiction. And it was a magazine that was started in 1946 by John Carnell, and it went right up into the 70s, sort of. But in 1964, Michael Moorcock took over the reins. Uh, New Wave started, but I'm going to do a history of the magazine, or a little more detail, because it's got its origins in a fanzine in sort of mid to late 1930s. But this one is from April 1959, and John Carnell writes basically a two-page uh, editorial every issue. Now, I've been reading a few of these after I cleaned them up, and I find them quite interesting. So I'm going to attempt something again, is me reading, which hasn't gone that well at times because of cognitive abilities, but I feel okay at the moment, so we'll give it a go. And I'm hoping that you find it as interesting as I do. And if you do find this interesting, there's lots to read and other editorials that could be done as well. So, as I say, this is April 1959 issue, and the editorial is called "And Brickbats dot 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 to ITA." October 30th, 1938, the Columbia Broadcasting System in America presented Orson Welles' radio adaptation of H.G. Wells' The War of the Worlds in their Mercury Theater series. A ring of stark realism in the opening announcement sent thousands of people panicking out of their homes thinking the Martians had landed, especially in the New Jersey area where the invasion was purported to be taking place. As Don Fabin states in his chapter on science fiction in motion pictures, radio, and television, in Reginald Bretner's Modern Science Fiction, the impact it had on the people of New Jersey and elsewhere in the country that night can only partially be ascribed to the broadcast itself. There were certain elements of timing and coincidence that magnified the normal effect of the show itself. And it is hard to tell whether it was the science fiction that made such a smash hit, or a peculiar combination of circumstances that had little to do with the program itself, but it was a tremendous success. While Professor J. O. Bailey states in his book Pilgrims Through Space and Time, Mr. Orson Welles' fake news broadcast of the invasion from Mars aroused widespread panic because thousands of people had been softened up for this invasion by a literature in which they must have placed some faith. In Britain, we had a pretty good laugh over the gullibility of our American friends. A panic over a radio play. After all, it couldn't happen here. Fabin also mentions that the hubbub furnished social psychologists with an array of social phenomena that is still debated in classrooms. February 20th, 1959, Britain's Associated Redefusion presented their TV play Before the Sun Goes Down in similar vein, with a sensational opening stampeding thousands of viewers with their announcement. We interrupt programs for a special announcement. An unknown satellite has appeared over London, and it is possibly hostile, followed by a statement from the Prime Minister, and this on the eve of Mr. Macmillan's departure from Moscow. Timing and coincidence again playing its grim role. The press stories of resultant panic are interesting and follow a similar pattern to the experience after the American radio sensation. Telephone lines jammed, people fainting, mothers frantically collecting children, others rushing into the streets. Doubtless British psychologists will now also have sufficient material to last them for many years. Both these panics strongly point up the fact that neither radio or television should be allowed to sensationalize their fiction. Humanity is now geared to get its news as it happens, and no longer by carrier pigeon or Pony Express. Unfortunately, the general public are more to blame in these incidences than the authorities who dream up gimmick openings, especially with television, which has almost a hypnotic influence on a lot of people. Great boon though it is in many respects, the world's greatest time waster causes thousands to nightly drowse through the evening, hours only subconsciously listening and watching to the silver screen. Advertising breaks, especially around 9 p.m., are signals for small talk, drinks, the teapot, and hustling younger children off to bed. Small wonder, then, that this particular 9 p.m. break caught thousands off guard and missing the brief title flash, Television Playhouse, before the sensational interruption. From there on, the most somnambulant of viewers would be all attention, and during the 10 to 15 second announcement of dire peril before the credit titles appeared informing that it was a play, half the people must have left their seats. Timing and circumstances were just right to create a panic. Many hardened science fiction readers were momentarily caught off guard by the opening. Artist Brian Lewis's immediate thought was, good, oh, they've arrived, and dived into the garden to get a glimpse of the satellite hovering motionless over London, doubtless to add some authenticity to a future cover painting. In retrospect, the crowning pity is that after its history-making opening, Before the Sun Went Down turned out to be such a bad play. I will leave aside the fact that it was science fiction of the Earth Abides type, although TV Times insisted that it was not science fiction and horror. Notice the way the uniformed always link the two together. It has taken just over 20 years for the echo of our laughter to bounce back across the Atlantic. I hope the Americans enjoyed the joke. John Carnell. And the Brian Lewis was the artist of this cover painting as well. Anyway, if you enjoyed that, and if I didn't butcher it too badly, do let me know. And maybe I can read a few of these as I come along, or find ones that I think are of interest. Thank you, BookTube.